honor to be here. This is my second time at Brookdale, and I feel really humbled and very, very honored again to read with a group of amazing poets and friends, Suzanne and Laura and Michael and Colleen, and thank you everybody for coming out. I know it's the end of the semester. And I also hope that you know you have an incredible, incredible community here. I teach at Monmouth, and they have a pretty good community there too, but you are very lucky here. So. And I'm gonna start with an initiation poem. We were talking about this earlier. I don't have too many happy poems, so this is one of the few happy dark poems. And I was born and lived in Romania for the most part of the my first 24 years, that was communist Romania. And at the time, Romania was a totalitarian regime. I used to try and get away from the drudgeries of life. I used to spend summers in nun or monk monasteries with two of my closest friends. And we had to stay with the nuns, but what I really wanted to do is flirt with the monks and try to corrupt them. And so this poem is, to a certain extent, a sort of a coming of age about sexual awakening. But in retrospect, I think the experience was, I would like to think that the experience was also political and really subversive. Because the monks and the monasteries were these places that seemed on the surface untouched by history, by the endemic corruption, by the fear and deprivation that we all lived in. And I love the transgressive monks with the long beards and dresses, the habits. So, self-portrait of monk. A bearded bride in black chiffon, lay of garlic dandling his neck like the pearl ballroom choker of God. He prances across the cobbled path, pushing a wheelbarrow stacked with freshly scissored lovage and marigold. I've been spying all morning from the terrace suspended mid-wall, and when, halfway across the courtyard, my monk lifts his head, I abandon echoes the name of the rose and bend over the rail to flip a ladybug, sure he'll notice my silky mane. He doesn't, so I trail through the oak door into the dining hall to watch him arrange sunheads and mauve field tulips in clay pots. I have already retraced the salty route of his fingers on the spines of pickled grape leaves, in ground lamb hand-rolled, in herbs sun-dried. He cooks and feeds and scrubs, but never eats, my monk, spends lunch elbow deep in suds or scratching the bellies of cats. No wonder he's so famished by the time Cassiopeia arrives. Then black chiffon and ivory flesh stream upward, shape-shifting in flight. Raven, whiskered bat, pricolici, vârcolaci. At dawn, he lands between two rose bushes, soot in his mouth, weeping who knows why, my celestial monk, torn cassock glistening with spent saliva, rapture in upturned eyes. And a love poem for my husband, Michael. And one of the beats in the poem is the capitalized B-A-T-S, so beats from Michael. They become sweeter with age, bolder too, surprisingly firm when I broil them whole in early winter, the reds carnal as always, but less likely to bleed at the slightest incision. When I release the tinfoil, the beet's hot tongue pries open my mouth. I take it all, laced, earth smoke, vapors rising straight from heart rot. When I transferred the steamy root to your plate and offered to slather it with butter, honey, goat cheese, you decline, the very sight of them unpalatable. I defend the loneliness of its sagging folds, pure heartthrob. I try Aphrodite, the beetroot goddess, her lava lips. I try the oracle at Delphi, who claimed beads worth in silver. Try bead powdered warriors, god Kvasir's meat of inspiration. Rasputin's protege, you could see it in his eyes. Then, at a loss, I riff poorly on the beads. With fingertips and knife, you peel off its singed slip and carve the hard flesh into robust chunks. Eat, eat. Don't mind me. I love seeing you eat. You feed me your own whiskered heart, then mine, stained fingers, one with a beat. And my mother has been coming to the United States for the last, 15 years or so, on and off, sometimes for good chunks of time, 6, 7 months. And she works, she cleans, generally she takes care of elderly or children, but sometimes she cleans houses. So a few years ago, she called me and she was working in this upscale Manhattan apartment, and so she called. She said, "Well, I'm cleaning, this apartment, and I find this couple. They don't have any kids, but I'm finding all these toys everywhere, and so under the mattress and under the bed and in the different drawers, and they're weird. You push a button and they make all these funny noises, and some of them have little wings And I realized she was talking about a vibrator, and so I tried to explain, and she's like, but they're married. But what do you mean? And I thought, well, okay, this is not the kind of conversation I want to have with my 60-some-year-old my mother on the phone. She explained for the first time what a vibrator was. So I said, okay, we'll talk about it when I see you. So, but that's the eager beaver in the poem. Alien resident. My mother rescues bitter cherries off Queens Boulevard. She catches and hoists them in the net of her pleated skirt, cradles them to her employer's kitchenette. On a leather bar stool that spins into night, she pits and pits, keeps pace with the vermicular fanfare, bitter blood on the nails, petite castanets cackling in the dry mouth. On the trenches of dawn, crushed flesh dissolves in the sugar bath as she nods on one elbow to the squills of bedroom doors. She spoons coffee, keeping count aloud, and pours milk for kids' pancakes as instructed with a measuring cup. The perfect scale of her eyes she wastes on homespun sanitizers, 2/3 vinegar, 1/3 peroxide for sinks, counters, her eager beaver, his dumbbells. She jogs through the day in bark slippers, elm embossed with perfectly knifed hearts. What's she doing here, my mother, in a toddler cot? Apron pockets lined with shriveled fruit worms, jars of preserve ticking under the mattress like hand grenades. And I'm gonna read a section from a long poem, a longer sequence that Suzanne mentioned and that I mentioned earlier at that dinner. And it's called Radioactive Wolves, a retelling, and a number of the sections in this poem are inspired by, and some of them use direct language, and some of the stories from Svetlana Alexievich's Voices from Chernobyl, an oral history of a nuclear disaster. And I want to read some sections specifically because we're commemorating 30 years from the Chernobyl disaster in Pripyat, Ukraine. According to a 2016 Greenpeace study, the accident remains the most severe, the one whose irreversible damages to the environment and to us we're gonna see over time. Some people consider the zone, the area approximately 18 miles around the reactor uninhabitable for at least 20, 30,000 years. So a number of people have returned, a number of people refused to evacuate, to leave. About 600,000 people were relocated, but a number of people refused to leave, remained in the zone, and in the last few years, others have returned. So I'm going to read just some segments. Chernobyl Zone, 1986. Do not believe me. I was not there. I was pulping rotten quinces. I did not know, just as those who were there did not know. It was a sacred lie, the lightning rod, the radioactive shock forgotten before it happened. Moscow Hospital, May 1986. Sit. No touching in here. My husband buckles against the iron frame. Someone comes in to measure the heat. Because he clocked in 3 minutes too soon, because we fooled till dawn, then stayed awake to let each other's souls dry and dress us for the day. There are sicknesses that can't be cured. You have to sit and watch them. This one blooms like black petunia in a commercial garden. Mouth-sized tares swell to fullness without a hint of sun. In his mouth, on cheeks, tongue, they bloom. Black petunias, black to smell, black to touch. At night, petals hover below the bulb like miniature kites, speckled with blood. They are of flesh, these flowers that channel poison away from the heart. I cool him off with a bouquet of parsley dipped in moonshine. For a night, you can tell the angels have been choking on celestial gas. Chernobylnik means mugwort. Chernobyl, the house of mugwort. Once or twice, pinnately lobed, lanceted, gloss doubled by a cottony down, it shadows stream banks and country ditches, dishevels front steps. In one dream, my right foot misses it. The fossilized berry explodes seconds before my soul means to crush it. At one time, pilgrims rubbed sandals with mugwort oil to make the journey light. Held the weed in esteem, it added a kick to beer, warded off the mischief of mushrooms. Mixed with honey, it takes away blackness off the falls. Rolled into pellets, ignited directly on the skin, it flames uncontainable. Its seed was said to cure quotidians, soothe hysterics, deobstruct the spleen. Boiled in lard, it quelled swellings of tonsils and quinsy. Here now, in mugwort land, it has lost all powers but the abortive. Women wait till roots are dry and brittle, snapping when bent. One after another, they let themselves let go, for there's no way to tell if what they carry resembles a human. Exclusion zone. The soldiers who've measured the whole nod. She milks her cow, pours the milk onto the ground in the front yard. She wipes each worm egg, places it in the wicker basket, buries the basket in the hole, tall as a standing man. Good woman, hummed the soldiers with eyes the color of moonshine. Good woman. My neighbor gifted all her chickens, watched us twist their soft necks. My mouth kept track of each new knot, left eyes drift toward the year dissolution of lips. Blood dripped into the milk pail. When doctors and nurses stopped touching, I fed his tube vodka. What did I care for what I couldn't understand? The only time I don't cry is at night. You can cry about the dead at night. Tell everyone about my daughter. Write it down. At 4, she sings, dances, knows poetry by heart. She puts her dolls on IV. She was born a little sack. Complex aplasia in medical terms. Suit of armor, doctor's translation for us. Right. Every half hour, we squeeze out her urine manually through an artificial opening. Maybe that's enough. I know you're curious. People who weren't there are always curious. And I'm going to end with a poem titled Memoir. And this memoir is a sort of a compressed version of my life under communism. Romania had probably the most repressive and oppressive regime in Eastern Europe. And the poem addresses also one of those pivotal, haunting moments in my pre-American history, a moment that I return to again and again. And I have a poem about this in the first collection, and this is a second poem in the second collection. And it somehow functions as a marker. Memoir. The epigraph. Romanian dictators Elena and Nicolae Ceausescu were executed on December 25th, 1989, after 25 years of ruthless rule. The story of a people is the story of their denials. If I bulleted that story now, you wouldn't know how to wipe the sweat off your palms. Your poor palms afraid to set down the remote. You must have seen at least once the news clip of the 2 dictators who denied till bullets mute them the genocide against their own people, and must have seen more than once the PBS special on infamous words festering, cribs stacked with cords of bones rigged with spectral smiles. Who would have guessed that the orchestrators of terror would end up in a makeshift barrack, their shriveled torsos so infuriatingly small and rigid as dolls, but for arms flapping hysterically? 12 million of us for 25 years. They watched us crawl in unison toward the palm that held 2 crumbs. One for the informer, one for the informed on. You may have understood the story of the firing squad, how, fearing clones, we measured and re-measured the corpses, shot and re-shot them. We each craved a bit of dried blood, a frayed cuticle, an eyebrow stump, a finger on the trigger. So we replayed the execution all through Christmas, kissed our informers, broke bread with strangers, stopped stoning strays, begged gypsies for forgiveness. We loved as only people who cannot get enough of death love. We loved unconditionally for one long day, that Christmas of 1989. Thank you.